I was thinking about talking about father-in-laws this week, but I thought, no, I better not. My little buttony thingy working? There we go. Instead, I'd like to talk about Denny Crum. In 1986, I saw an interview with Mr. Crum as he was leading the Louisville Cardinals into the Final Four. Basketball champion. You can tell it was 1986. Look how short those shorts are. Anyway, look at the color of that suit, too. I got to get me one of those. Anyway, Denny Crum was the coach of the Cardinals, and he brought his team to the Final Four, and they'd been having phenomenal success. And an interviewer asked him what he attributed his success, his team's success, to. And he said, it's this motto that we have. Good people do for themselves, great people do for others. They were looking out for each other, they were praising each other, they were building each other up, and succeeding in all that they did. In this particular chapter that we look at today, in chapter 18, we see David being praised by the military leaders, by the people, by Saul's family. We see all of this happening as they are building him up and he is building them up. God is working in this world. And if we put everything aside and work for others and help others to become great, we will become great as well, and we will be able to overcome obstacles. David was becoming a national hero. He had been promised the hand of Saul's daughter, and all of this praise, all of this adulation was starting to arouse Saul's jealousy. He wasn't happy with this at all, and it was driving a wedge between himself and David. And unfortunately, as this wedge drove into this tree, it wasn't going to fall on David, it was going to fall on him. I couldn't find one where the tree actually fell on the own guy, but I found this one. It was close enough. Now if I can get it to go away. There had begun to be tension, and this whole chapter is filled with tension. There's the tension that we see between Saul and his family. There's the tension that we see between Jonathan and his dad. There's the tension that we see when Saul attempts to kill David a couple times. And then there's the tension that we see towards the end of the chapter where David, Saul's daughters, are in love with David, and the tension that brings because Saul hated David by that time. The love of Saul's family for David serves as a contrast. It shows that even when we have enemies in this world and obstacles to overcome, God can move in ways that will bring even our enemies' families, onto our side. Now, the point that the author wants to make is not all the historical things that are going on, but he wants to make theological points. And his theological point is that God is with David and has departed from Saul. That's his story. That's what he wants to hammer home, and several times he's going to mention that to us, that God was with David. God is with David, and that's the reason why Saul's family is so enamored with him, because God is moving. Now, I learned this at extemporaneous speech. You've got to have points, right? And this is my first point. Write it down. This is my first point. Jonathan forms a covenant with David here at the beginning of this chapter. It's a classic story that we have here of friendship, of fellowship, of the bonds that can form between people. There's a unity here between Jonathan and David. There is one in spirit. There is commitment to each other as they are knit to one another. This love word here in this particular chapter also has political overtones. Now, that doesn't seem like it's hardly possible. How in the world can the word love have political overtones? But as we look at this word love through the book of Samuel and in other places, we see that Saul loved David because he was the king and formed a relationship with him. And it was a king's depositing his love and fellowship and commitment on David. Hiram, the king of Tyre, loved David. They had a political treaty. It was not only just love, it was a political relationship. It was a covenant between individuals, and in this case, it was a covenant between kings. It was a covenant that had some political ramifications, as there was a treaty that was involved in all of this. The political overtones of this are marked by their covenant that they had and by Jonathan's extravagant gifts. Jonathan is in effect turning over the kingdom to David in all of these gifts that he gave. He's saying, I'm not going to be the king. I may be the crown prince, but I am not going to be the king in this world. And then there's a larger theme, and that is the theme of the greater giving to the lesser. And we can see that throughout these stories as well. First off, it was King Saul who tried to give his armor to David. And then it was Goliath who involuntarily gave his sword to David. And now it's Jonathan giving him his sword and his bow. As everything is working in David's favor, as the great people of this story are giving to the lesser person in this story, as David goes on his rise to the throne. And it leads to this crown prince basically renouncing his throne. The last time that Jonathan would ever see David, he confirmed his resolve that he wouldn't be king, but that David would. A few chapters from now, we'll see, as they depart from each other, Jonathan knows that David ought to be king. My second point, Olivia, this is my second point. I want you to count them. David first becomes jealous of David here in this story. He's going to maintain his jealousy throughout the rest of his life. But this is the first time that we see that particular jealousy. He is jealous because the general population loved David. You know, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his 10,000. The military people were all in love with David. They thought he was a great guy. He had led them to battle. They demonstrated that he could kill whatever the enemy sent at them. They all loved David. Saul even, in fact, says in the story, loved David. Michael. Do we have any Michaels in here? No, not spelled that way. It should probably be Michelle. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, Michael loves David, and that creates tension in this whole story. My third point, Olivia. Okay. I'm just picking on Olivia today. I don't know why. Anyway, Saul now attempts to kill David. That's something you should never do.